Hello and welcome to Tales from the Pit, the behind-the-lens access to the entertainment world and the creative people involved. Today we're going to talk everything tour director with our guest, Joe VillaCrusis. Joe, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get into this. My first time doing a podcast. I'm stoked.
Nice.
Should be entertaining.
Yes, absolutely. And I also want to take a quick moment to announce our special co-host today. We have WSCA mixtape host Bonnie. Bonnie's joining us too. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Mixtapes. I love mixtapes.
There you go. Nice.
Man, yes. Mixtapes are classic. People don't do that anymore.
I know. Well, that's what Bonnie, tell us about your show.
So currently my mixtape at the radio station is just that. It's a mixtape. It's a little bit of everything. It's all the stuff I love. And it's me being able to share with other people, artists, their creativity, stuff like that. This past week, I interviewed Brandy Clark, Grammy Award winner Brandy Clark, and photographed her show last night in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And then the week before, I had Lauren Monroe and Rick Allen on my show, which was really exciting. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thank you, Bonnie. And we'll put some links in the show notes to this podcast as well.
About Joe, though.
I love mixtapes. I want to talk about mixtapes.
What was the last mixtape you got? What's the last mixtape you got?
The last mixtape I still give mix. I don't do tapes because I don't have a tape player, but I'll do like the occasional mix CD. But I think the last mixtape I got was probably like in the late 80s, early 90s. And it probably had a lot of, or at least on the ones that had a lot of like, I guess that was some Smiths, probably some Cure, and also a lot of bad hair metal because I embrace 80s and late 80s and mid 80s hair metal. I think that it's the most underappreciated music genre on the planet. People just, it's very earnest, very true. It's, there's no like mystery about it. They're not trying to be cool. They're who they are. I love that.
Yeah.
So did you make the mixtape for yourself or for somebody else?
No, mixtapes are meant to be given. I mean, that's like the best part of a mixtape.
That's it.
When you're like in high school, or even I'd say when I was in at like first year university, I would still give the occasional mix CD because sometimes you're still, it's your way of sharing a part of you and the way of like implying certain feelings and or trying to create a feeling. I mean, I think it's a lost art. It's a lost art, and it's unfortunate. I don't think people will ever, the way people consume music now. It's just there's no value to that, like albums or mixtape where there's a whole idea or a feeling towards. Just like here, 1 week it's the big thing, next week it's not. Drives me crazy. And now I'm going to sound old. Sorry.
Well, I'd also add the skill to the mixtape was being able to catch the song on the radio and record it to your mixtape as well.
Oh, for sure. Or when I used to call in to this radio station called Show 97.7 FM here in Montreal. And I would like literally try. I'd spend hours trying to get on the line so I can request my song, so I could dedicate it to my amour of that particular time. And it was always so much fun. I mean, I don't think people experience those things anymore. There's a magic to that.
Absolutely, yeah. The old-fashioned mixtapes and the radio, because you didn't have access to everything, so you had to wait for your song to come to grab it or to record it or anything.
For sure, and the music, I know we're going on a tangent right now, but the whole thing is even with the way music is today, it's as much as I really respect and appreciate technology and what it affords people and the internet and how everyone can make music and share it with the world, and the cream of the crop rises, I guess they say. But there's something to be said about the era of the great A&R guy and the great producer, where you had people who actually worked on artist development, who took the time to work with artists and bring great artists to us versus now where, it's hard out there. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it and heard it. I mean, there's so many bands touring and there's just not enough, there's not enough venues and not enough dates in the year because everyone now can do it. I mean,
Yep.
Listen, again, now I sound old, but this is just my opinion.
So let's put a quick pin in that because I do want to talk about those specific things. But since we're talking about history, let's talk about your history. Where did you start? What was your process that got you to your industry, to the industry?
So I guess it was 94, 95, I was in my second year university. I was playing hockey, wasn't really interested in that culture anymore. I had always played music and I'd always loved music. This was also during the era, I guess, well, it was during the era where Lollapalooza was formally introduced. And it really inspired me in the sense that I'd never seen or heard of any other festival or any other events where so many different genres of music were brought together. So I thought, with a group of friends of mine, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put together a show. I put together a 3-day festival called Local Bazooka. Well, actually, it was originally called Local Palooza, but the local promoter in Montreal decided to try to sue me, saying there was copyright infringement, while ironically, after my festival had launched, Lollapalooza reached out and said, you could have done it. We wouldn't have had a problem with it because that's what it's about. But doing that event, doing that 3-day festival where I had literally, I think it was 3 nights. I think we had 21 bands, first time ever doing a concert on my own. Like the group of us, we were all like I said, 19, 20. Didn't go off great. I mean, we're lucky. Production wise, it went well, but it didn't, I guess, for whatever reason, it didn't draw the amount of people that we had hoped. But what it did do was put my name out there. That led me to booking clubs in Montreal. Like immediately after that, I got offered 2 of the big indie clubs in Montreal to be first it was the assistant booker and then the booker. And through that, I learned how to do front of house and I started meeting bands who would come through and, having had that knowledge of how to run a venue and how to deal with bands during that process really, gave me, I guess, a bit of an angle to work on if I want to work on tour. And then at the same time, because the way the scene was in Montreal, the bigger promoters, there was like a big indie promoter called Greenland. They brought me aboard to sort of be a promoter rep for them in my 2 clubs because I was booking 2 clubs, which in turn led to even, the what's now Live Nation. So I basically started just working in the club circuit. It was really where it started. And then I had met this band or this gentleman named Jordan Zadorozny, who, if you don't know about, is an incredible producer and still one of the greatest songwriters I've ever had the pleasure to work with and consider friends. His band called Blinker the Star, keep in mind it's like 94, 95, grunge is it, like Pumpkins, Nirvana. This guy met him through some mutual friends, did a show at one of my venues, and he and I hit it off right away. And literally within, I guess, 4 weeks of he and I meeting, his band got signed to a major. And that took us, that was where the tour journey began. Like that was like, I'd say, 95, 96. And I never really looked back from then. There are moments where I stopped, but for the most part, that's kind of how it went. Love that band, miss them. 3-piece band, man. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, people don't realize the importance of going through that process. And, there's 3 guys, 3 band members and myself in like a cargo Econoline with a cage for our back, like a cage behind us for our back, like literally just a bench to the driver's seat and the passenger seat, and just tons of gear. And people don't realize, like, if that's a big, like, I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of going through that process in order to understand how, not just the actual, doing the shows part, but those, just the spaces in between where you really get to learn about yourself and what the process is like of being on the road with an act. Yeah, that's how it started. I've great, like, probably to this day, still think of it as like the fondest, my fondest memories are from that era of touring. Everything else is great. I mean, we'll get into that later, but like, you know, you're young, you're hungry, you know, you're working with a band who's, you know, like a quasi it band. You're working, you know, we're meeting all these people. It was just the first time going to LA. You know, we drove for 47 hours straight. We had done CMJ, and then we had our first show in LA with Archers of Loaf, I think it was, someone of that nature. And, you know, drove 47 hours straight, nonstop. We were a mess. You know, first time going to the Riot House, the Hyatt. You know, it was every cliche that you could imagine was lived in the beginning, not to the extent of the greater cliches that happened later, but, you know, all of those little moments were pretty incredible. Sorry if that, maybe I'm just babbling now.
No, that was great. That's the kind of where I was headed to. But you had mentioned front of house. Were you running front of house for a bit?
Yeah, I was mixing them. Yeah, I was mixing them as well. So they needed someone who could, you know, I was always playing music. So it's kind of familiar. Like I played music, recorded a little bit of my own music, like my little indie jangly stuff. But, you know, there were times in my clubs where our front of house guys couldn't make it. So I learned. And, you know, working directly with Jordan, I got to really understand, because he was producing his own music. So I got the opportunity to learn from someone who actually did it. I mean, obviously the studio dynamic and the live dynamic are a little different, but at least gave me the foundation to be able to, you know, to literally like present their music the way it should have been presented. Much like, I mean, I'm not going to compare myself to Nigel Goodrich, but much like Nigel Goodrich's relationship with Radiohead, where he produced everything, went on the road and brought it out live. I mean, I remember first time seeing them, and they sounded exactly like the records. I'm like, how do they do that? Oh, their front of house engineers, also their producer, kind of helps. So I did do kind of where I started was front of house, and ended up doing double duty, which is what most people end up still. I mean, a lot of people are still doing that.
Yeah. So double duty. I mean, depending on where you are with the band and what level the band is, you know, if you're starting up, you want to try to get as much done as you can with as limited amount of, you know, team members as possible, because you only have so much space on your vehicle.
Yeah, and there's only so much, you know, to be honest. Like even financially, it's a lot tougher to you know to care. The more people you have, the more it's going to cost, and you know, you have to find the right people to do the right job. Like we didn't have a guitar tech. I mean, literally, I was doing doing stage stuff with them. I was literally, it was me, Jordan, Petter, and Colin. Like 19. I mean, it was crazy time. We were all just kids. It was incredible. I still look back fondly. I would not trade that experience for anything in the world. You know, it's like crossing the country and seeing things you've never seen, and I can't begin to truly express how that entire era of touring of my career really changed my life. Took me another direction.
Nice. So where does that go? Where do you head from there? So that was the first sort of that.
So it's like 94, 90. So we're going to say it was 94 to 97, 98, somewhere in there. And so I was telling you before, I was working with a promoter. There was another promoter / management company / booking company in the same office that I was working out of with Greenline. And they were doing all the Ninja Tune stuff. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ninja Tune, but they're like one of the big electronic dance music, or what they now call electronic dance music, electronic music labels from the late 90s, early 2000s. They had artists like Kid Koala, Amon Tobin, DJ Vadim, Bonobo. So I ended up working with it was called VSP, Victor Schiffman Productions, and working as a part-time booker and tour managing some of the dance acts that Ninja Tune were sending out. So at that point, I was just really doing tour managing, because most of those acts are coming out of Europe, and when they come over here, they usually come with their full teams. So, you know, I had the opportunity to get my foot in the door with, both like world music and like turntablism, as they called it, and I guess I don't know what you would call like experimental electronic music with like Amon stuff and Kid Koala stuff. So I got to do some of that stuff, and it was really, I never thought, I didn't think it would lead me down the path it led me down later on in my career in terms of working almost exclusively in EDM, but it certainly prepared me on some of us to understand, I think, more the technological side of what they're doing, because, prior to that, I was just doing straight up bands, rock bands. There wasn't, no keyboards, there were no turntables, no synths. It was just, straight up guitar, bass, drums, vocals. So did that for a couple of years. And then in '02, I want to say, is it '02? Let's try to figure out. In '02, I got involved with a world label called 6 Degrees, who had Bebel Gilberto, who's her father's Juan Gilberto, State of Bengal, Banco de Gaia, and a few other acts. That ended up putting me on there with those electronic acts for a couple of years. I was out with them for with I think I did 2 tours with Toby with Banco de Gaia. Just trying to think who else. I did another band called Kova. So what they were doing was having me come in, be their North American tour manager. So they would have these international acts come in, and a lot of those relationships just came about because of the Ninja Tune thing. I was already working in electronic music, and the same agents were working it. And, the circle was pretty small at the time. And then after Bebel Gilberto, I went back and did a band, to this day, my favorite band live to work with and to seen, a band called The Secret Machines. I still, to this day, don't think there is a better live act on the planet. 3-piece, much like Blinker, but really big, psychedelic, bombastic rock, a little spiritualized vibe. But they were just writing great pop music and it was like great heavy pop rock with a slant of psychedelic. It's just and great guys. That whole experience was how would I put it, was both like incredibly inspiring and helped me grow a lot, but it was also probably around the time where I started getting into some things that I shouldn't have gotten into. But, I guess, as I was saying earlier before, no one will really, I don't think anyone can really teach you how to deal with like professional or artist success, especially if you've never done it. Like the artists that I've been working with up to then we were still doing 1,200 cap rooms, 500 to 1,000. So, it's you're making money, but you're not playing 5,000-10,000 people. And then with the Machines, we got to open up, we were on tour with Interpol, and this was when Interpol was, beginning to hit their peak with that Turn On the Bright Lights record. They were huge. And, I was living in New York a lot of the time with them, and there was a whole scene there. I'm not going to blame the scene or anything else, but, if you don't work out a lot of your stuff, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, and I went through a little period there where it was a little difficult to keep my head about. But yeah, so
can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Ask a quick question. So
yeah, of course.
I'm just thinking about what you said when you first started talking about that band at the beginning, was that it was by far your favorite band, right? Like, can you tell me something that in that experience, was it the band? Was it the music? Was it
the music
that made it your favorite?
It was, I've always said this. It's like always felt this about music, is the right music and the right songs find you. And where I was at that particular moment in my life, I remember exactly where so the agent I was working with who had worked with Bebel was a woman named Sam Kirby, who is now, I believe, VP of UTA. She's in my opinion, the greatest agent on the planet. But she would always give me DVDs or CDs of new bands because I was always hungry to hear music. I always knew music. And I remember being in her office in New York, and I think we had another week or two left. And at this point, I'm already doing bus tours. I'm out of vans. I've been out of vans for like probably 4 years. So, was disinterested in going back into that world. But she handed me this DVD, and I remember putting on the songs. The DVD was a video of a song called "Sad and Lonely," and I was going through a lot of things. My father had passed away, and there were a number of life events that were going on at the time. That just when I heard that song, I'm like, I don't care whether they're like doing this via taxi cab. I have to work with this band. Like the songs, and if they can pull this stuff off live. I mean, I have to. And, I did my due diligence, met the guys, and like within, I guess it was 2-3 weeks of finishing one tour, I immediately jumped in with them and got back in a van, which I said I would never do. Like I said, there's no way I'm doing this, but I really believed in what they're doing musically. I really thought it resonated with me so much. And they had this coolness about them too. They did the whole, like not retro vibe Jack White, but like, dress shirts, blazers, they look cool. They had all of the things that had I wanted to be an artist, I probably would have gone that angle.
Connection.
Yeah. And musically, I mean, beyond anything else, the music was fantastic. I mean,
so were you you were their tour manager for
just tour managing. Yeah. From 2000 on their first record, from Now Here's Nowhere. Leading up to the beginning of 10 Silver Drops. That era was, the beginning of my career was incredible, but that was the next big, I guess, 10 years later, I got to experience something that I never thought, you have these experiences in life where you're like, oh, this is good, it's going to get, this is like, it's not going to get better. You evolve in your career and you go on, and then all of a sudden, I happened upon this band, and it is just like it was just incredible. Like they're one of the few bands where I can honestly, like every night I made the effort to, like, I would go out and watch them play. Like it was just great. magic. You don't really get to see that often. At least I don't think
awesome. So. What takes you from tour manager to tour director? Like,
well, that's a long trip. If we were to sped up, so I was I guess so we sped up to today or the last couple of years. I was after I would say it was probably 2000, and I have to look at my resume. It was probably on 15. I was working with Simple Plan, and I just come in to fill in as a tour manager, tour director. So I got come in to sort of like right the ship and act not only the tour director but a tour manager, and that was because I was taking a break. I finished with Skrillex. That was my big, I guess the client that sort of gave me the biggest push and really taught me how to manage a large scale touring party. I mean, with Sonny, so we're going to reverse a little, I guess. At that time, I wasn't. My title wasn't tour director; it was tour and road manager. So we're looking at 2010 to about 2012, 13. We had, it just sort of happened. Like we were all again, dance music at the time. EDM didn't have a lot of people who had experience. So when I came in, I had a lot of the most touring experience. Thankfully, I had other people around me. Production, like some of the crew guys did. So it sort of helped, but I sort of learned on the fly how to manage and sort of, deal with all the vendor relationships, do all the bidding, work on all the budgets, help with all the routing. That was my first real big, I guess, experience with that. And the one that really launched me into the stratosphere of going towards a tour director role, like a full-time tour director role.
So so then let me ask you that then. Yeah, what is the difference then if I'm a tour manager and I'm a tour director?
So tour director, most of the time, the tour director oversees everything. The tour director typically does all vendor relations, does all the vendor relations, does all the purchasing, hires the crew more often than not, works directly with the agent. The tour manager, so what'll end up happening is you'll have a tour director who stays at home and sort of orchestrates things, make sure that all the day-to-day stuff gets all the reports, reports to management or whoever else, or the agent, or, the business manager, whoever needs to have that information. But then your tour manager, road manager well, if you have a tour director, typically you then don't have a tour manager, you have a road manager who handles the day-to-day operations. And at that level, normally you're going to have an assistant as well. Because if a tour has a tour director, it's going to be typically a pretty large scale tour. It's not going to be a one bus. It'll probably be two, maybe three buses, usually two buses, maybe three, and a couple of trucks. There ends up being a lot of moving parts. And you can't have, like, the tour manager's time is so, like, on the road, a road manager's time is so limited that you need someone to sort of orchestrate everything from outside of it. But also, give you some perspective sometimes and be like that cheerleader from home. And, occasionally you'll fly in, make sure everything's okay, deal with any problems. It's hard to deal with some of the day-to-day stuff, obviously, because you're not there and you don't get to develop those interpersonal relationships that you do while on tour. But, more often than not, you're overseeing everything. You're making sure that everyone is okay as best you can. You're getting department heads talking to you. You're working out any problems that you can, that aren't directly that don't need real time assessment and solutions.
Are you advancing the tours and stuff like that?
Yes.
Is that the tour
Yeah, you do everything. Yeah, you do all of that. I mean, you literally do everything. You, especially now with Master Tour, you just, if you have Master Tour, it's like, I'm going to input everything for you. There's your tour.
Yeah.
You're literally doing everything except booking the tour.
Yeah. For those that are not in, for those that are not in the industry, Master Tour is an application that allows you to sort of, it's your one-stop shop for everything related to a tour. You can enter all the dates, the schedules, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it's an incredible. I mean, I've been using this since I think I was one of the early users of the tour. I mean, I still talk to the guys, the adventure guys, I've loved to see how it's evolved. It's funny though. The one thing you learn is that no matter what, artists will always be, and crew will always be crew. You have this little application in your phone, and it literally tells you everything you need to know. And you'll have day sheets everywhere in the venue, and you'll have literally every bit of information available to you. But they'll still come up to you and ask you, "Hey, man, what time's loaded, dude?" Or I'm like, dude, like, you have it here. This is why we have this application. There'll also be, the running joke and I'm sure a lot of tour directors, tour managers agree, like the running joke is that we would give, or the response is check Master Tour. Literally, that's on the last couple of tours, I would just be, oh man, check Master Tour. And I don't say it meanly, but it's like, dude, like, you've been doing it, especially if you've been doing it in the last 10 years, you should know that it's like the tool. It's the easiest way to do things. It's much easier than like when I started, when we were doing everything with Excel sheets, where you didn't have emails. Oh, we can go to get your Sky pager. You'd have to pull over on the side of the road to do your interviews. Oh, it was great. It's great times. But yeah, so it sort of became this thing where from Skrillex, then I ended up working. I did some like road managing stuff with a bunch of indie acts. I sort of needed a break from dance music, and then I got pulled into this artist. I got offered the role of tour director, tour manager for Zoo, who's another, I guess, pretty well-reputed EDM artist. Worked with that for 2.5 years, and that was a great experience. It's always a pleasure to see, you take for whatever reason, I've often been put in a position where I'm brought in to sort of help elevate the current situation and team, and it's a double-edged sword, because you don't want to step on anyone's toes, but when you're working with artists and management who don't have that experience, you kind of need to step on toes, unfortunately. But it's great to see how any of these visions and ideas that artists have had to be able to like bring it, to help them bring it to fruition, because the relationships that you develop over years will give you the better break, will give you the better price. So if you think, if your manager goes to speak to a design company and they're saying it's $45,000-$50,000 to do your show, because I have the relationship with them prior to it, and they come back and say 30, it makes a huge difference, And I mean, that's also a big part of the tour director's job is having those long-term relationships that you can help leverage to get the clients you're working with to the next level. At least I believe it. I don't know if every tour director would agree, but I think it's an important part, is to be able to contribute on some level to the creative process, not necessarily the show, not necessarily musically or whatever else, but whatever their vision is, help get it there.
Hey, I just want to jump in here real quick and say that if you're enjoying the show, please check us out on all podcast locations and on YouTube. Search for Tales from the Pit podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. It helps us grow the show. All right, back to the show. So I want to ask specifically about, because you mentioned two very, artists that are well known that, I'm a fan of both. You said Skrillex and then you said a Simple Plan. Simple Plan.
Simple Plan.
So
Great guys.
Yes, absolutely. So those are two very different types of shows. Obviously,
Incredibly different.
A band has a full set of equipment for each member, and then you have EDM, which is going to be different, which may or may not have a band, which will probably have different lighting setup, different configurations, different crowd, different venues.
So this is what I'll say about, this is the big difference between the two, is that Simple Plan, when I was working with, were already a pretty established, and forgive me for saying this, but they're like a legacy act at this point. I mean, not legacy at the same level as, say, U2 or Pearl Jam, but they've been around for a while. They have their procedures, their process, the way they present. They have it locked in, and it's not going to change. And that was, to be honest with you, that was where, for me, there was a lot of butting heads with them. It was because I just felt that they're. I can only fault myself for wanting more out of them, but when you get to a certain point in your career and you're making a living and you've got kids, you don't necessarily want to spend that extra 10, 20, 30, $40,000 to bring the big show. Whereas with Skrillex, it was, the beauty of Skrillex, Sonny, is that he came from a punk rock background. So he was in bands before he was Skrillex. He was in from first to last. He was, he was in the scene. So he has that punk rock work ethic. But with him, it was just literally like when I started with him as a road manager, we were still doing 5,000 capacity rooms. And then when I left, we were doing stadiums, flying in private jets, and the production was like 6 trucks. It was insane. It was only one artist, but at that level, it's interesting because you don't just have the artist, you have the artist entourage. They carry photographers, we carry a videographer, we have an assistant. It's no longer a party, it's like one artist and then everyone else. So then you have your B and C parties, you have your production heads and your vendor and your vendors and stuff. But no, it's night and day between the two. The Skrillex show was much more, we were really trying to push technology in terms of what we could present. He was doing stuff like we literally had a spaceship, literally a spaceship that was on a lift that that went up and down and moved around. We had, he did a mocap, he did another thing called the Cell, which was a mocap shoot. He would wear a mocap suit where his image would be, what's the word I'm looking for, would be projected onto this satellite image. I mean, we were doing things that no one at the time in dance music was doing. That's the one thing with that entire period of my career that I really wish I was a little more present in the sense that things were happening very quickly. So I was learning a lot on the go. This is an artist who, in my opinion, I think most people agree is iconic at this point. No one can deny that his impact on the entertainment industry, whether you like his music or not, was global. So with that comes a lot of pressure on the ground to produce. And my only regret is not being all there all the time. I'd always get the job done, which is why, they say the industry does not care. On the road, people don't really, as long as the job gets done and the bottom line doesn't get affected, not very many people will say a thing. And when money is no longer an object and your artist doesn't realize that just paying people is not going to make the experience better or is not going to make the culture or the climate of the tour better, it can get ugly, it can get dangerous, it can get really toxic, get very, very toxic. But like I said, I don't, night and day between Simple Plan and Skrillex, I think. And that often happens with bands unless they really are trying to push push the development or bring more than what they were. Sonny still is going to bring you a hell of a show. I mean, he's much more music oriented now. I've noticed he's not nearly as spectacle driven. We don't have a spaceship anymore. He's just doing a DJ booth. He still has some great visuals, great lighting, great front of house, but it isn't nearly as we did that spaceship. That thing was just 3 variations of it. And just being part of that process, pretty cool. I'd never at that time worked with a show at that level, developed literally from scratch to fruition. Flying it to Japan, it was not. Oh man, it was so crazy. So much fun though.
So did you have any, when you're out on the road like that, do you have any favorite locations? And why are
favorite place in the world? Barcelona.
Why?
Best food, best people. We were literally for one summer, we were doing just festival dates, and we were literally almost living in Barcelona. So we had commandeered the W Hotel in Barcelona, beachfront every day. Here on the beach, the people are nice, the food is great. That Barcelona will always be close to my heart. And Mallorca.
That's awesome.
Just I had been to the Saint region. Those 2 cities. I would say Tokyo is huge for me. Again, the people, the way that I don't know if you've worked with a lot of Japanese artists or Japanese clients, but there is an efficiency and a professionalism that you will never see anywhere else in the world. These guys, they flew over to North America. We were doing Fuji Rock, and they flew over to a festival in North America to make sure that our spaceship would fit on their. They were taking measurements. It was insane. No one. They just do it right. They do it. They make sure everything is perfect. I mean, there are some limitations in Japan of what you can or can't do. There's there's a manner of living, a protocol that you sort of need to respect, which I really, really love as well. It sort of makes you, recognize that North American culture isn't the only way to live, which is a real important lesson, I think, for people to have. But yeah, Tokyo, definitely, like I said before, Barcelona, Mallorca, Rimini in Italy is another great one. In North America, Rimini, have you been to Rimini?
I know I have but I have photographs from a travel page or something.
Did they show you the pyramid? Dude, that place is great. Oh my God. I chipped a tooth there at one of our shows there. It was nuts. They were it's crazy. Bottle service, the whole kit and caboodle. But in North America, I'd say probably my favorite cities to work out of. I mean, my favorite event is always going to be Coachella. I've been doing Coachella for years, and I think that's the standard bearer for all festivals in the world. I don't care what anyone says, and I've done pretty much all the festivals in the world, and Coachella does it better than anyone else. I like Austin a whole lot. Another city I've been to, spent a lot of time in, and having worked on both the club level in their venue, the club level venues, all the way up to the arena size shows in there, really got to get a taste of every side of Austin, from, working with little indie promoters to, staying at the Four Seasons and having I got to experience all of that. And that was really cool. And the people, again, I mean, listen, there's not a city out there that's bad, to be honest. I can't sit here and say, oh, I really hated this city. Were there some bad experiences? Yeah, for sure. But it's not the city that's bad. It's the people. I've had some really, in 2020, 2012, my crew walked out on, we were in Cologne, I think it was Cologne. I think it was Cologne, Germany. My crew walked out because one of the union hands called me, made some racist comments towards me that I didn't hear. Yeah, and we were literally, we were about to pull the shot. And I mean, to this day, it's one of those things where I'm wow, my guys had my back. But yeah, you'll run into that, believe it or not, still in today's day and age, where everyone, needs to be. Everyone should know better. Put it that way.
Right.
So,
yeah. Luckily, you're a band of brothers out there, so that's nice.
Yeah, it's a family. You have no choice.
So speaking of family, then.
Yeah.
Joe, what happens when you're out on the road so much? How do the job requirements and what you're up to and being gone, how does that impact what's going on back home?
It's not easy. people like to think like when you meet someone, and I'm not going to say this is everybody, but I think that a lot of people who are in touring can empathize or can relate to this, is that, when you meet someone in your city, at first, there's this magic. There's a like my partner's in touring and does this, and oh yeah, I get to fly out, and there's this great independence. Like we come back together, and there's the initial magic is there, but then over time, especially I was married at one point, and when you're away for 35 weeks, every time you come home, it's like you're getting to know each other once again. And anyone who's been on the road will attest that when you come home, it's not like you can turn off being on the road. It doesn't happen. There's a 1 to 2 week period where you're just getting yourself back together. There's a lot of depression that comes with that, because all of a sudden you're left, the people that you've spent the better part of like 3 months, 6 months, a year are no longer there, no longer part of your day to day. It's hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, some of my dearest friends have successful relationships and marriages that have been lasted for decades, but I would say they're more the exception than the rule. I think that if you choose to work in this industry, especially in touring, that you have to understand that if you're going to go into it, like by the time you start making a real good living at it, like where you're making enough money to buy a home or whatever else, like there's the amount of sacrifice required to do that. I don't know whether, and again, I can say that other people have done it and been successful at it, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it again, because I would never trade any of my experience. I've loved every single one of them, but I know that, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're not home, you're not home. And your friends, if you're living the nomad life, the friends that you have at home, yeah, for sure, they're still your friends. But you come off the road, you have all this free time. They have, families, they have obligations. And, I've been doing it for, better part of 30 years now. So a lot of my friends, we don't really relate. It's hard to relate to people that don't do it, because they don't experience. They only see what they see or what the media presents. And, when you sit down and try to explain to them, yeah, they're amazed by the things you do, and you're staying in a 5-star hotel, but you don't see it. Great, we're flying in a private jet. It's only because there are no commercial jets. There are no commercial flights that'll get us there in time. Like, they don't realize like what it does to you. They don't understand it. I'm not going to ever compare it to being at war. It's not at all like being at war, but there is an isolation, and there is a great deal of there's a great deal of loneliness and sadness and depression that often comes about if you don't have a good support group around you to sort of guide you through it. But it's like I said, it's hard. It's not for everyone. So if you want to go into it, anyone who's listening, if you choose, I'm never going to tell anyone not to do it, because I think it's the greatest industry in the world, and I love what I've been doing for the last 2 decades. But remember that there is a sacrifice to it. For all that great stuff, there's another side to it that people don't talk about it, that people don't talk about. And that's, like you're saying, what's it like when you get home and how it affects your social life? There's none.
Right. One of the things that I've talked with a few other artists and touring personnel is that, a lot of times people get off tour depression. When you're on tour, you have a very
100%.
You're scheduled. So your entire day you don't have to think. Yep. Everything is presented for you, but your partner is not. And your partner's at home doing their daily life, and you're out on the road. So when you come back home, a lot of times there's like this conflict. Like, they want to go out because they've been home the whole time, but you want to come home because you've been out the whole time.
Not just that, not even about going out. It's just your day to day. If you're, my wife, was a teacher, so her schedule was like 9 to 6 or 9 to 5. My schedule was what my schedule was. It was, 22 hours a day. And I didn't really have that. I didn't have a non-tour structure. I kind of did what I wanted. So it's hard for a person, for your partner to, it's hard for both people to sort of find that middle ground to readjust, because by the time you get that rhythm back, you're gone again. When I got married, I was gone within a week. I never had a honeymoon. I was gone, I think, 3 days after I got married. I got home like the week before my wedding, left 3 days after. And that's going to wreck some havoc for sure. It's going to cause some difficulties. But for sure, depression is huge. And it's not just because your day is structured, it's the family. It's really, like I said, when you're spending that much time, it's a team. You're eating, sleeping, traveling, fighting, in some cases, which I never recommend, fucking on the tour. Like, it's hard. You come back and all of a sudden you're like, oh, your friend works at the bank and, wakes up at 7 o'clock and goes to work or takes us kids. Like, you can't relate. And they don't have the time for you they don't necessarily have the time to share with you, the same way that you do when you get off the road. So yeah, man, it's hard. Like I'll be the first to admit that it was a really, it was a big reason why I had to take time off. Like I struggled towards the latter part of my career, up until maybe a year ago, I was struggling with a lot of, demons and a lot of that loneliness that stems from having been away for so much, and then realizing that shit, I'm 48 years old and living with my dog. I got a great place. I've got all these things. It's great. And I've got my friends who live nowhere near my city. I mean, it's, it sort of forces a bit of a reckoning, so to speak, with yourself.
Yeah, health on the road is kind of a trick. It's tricky because not only are it's stressful because you're dealing with people and you're corralling people. We sort of briefly talked about before we started recording about, you're babysitting adults in some cases, but also things are being brought to you, substances are being brought to you on a regular basis because of the industry or whatever.
I'm going to dispel that right now. And I'm going to say that's not the case. Your alcohol's around, but the problem is if you're an addict, it's not about it's available to you. So, but if no one comes up to you, or very rarely have I had an experience where someone, because of excuse my language, anyone who's watching this and is, taken for someone who's in recovery, like, don't lie to yourself. The reality is you're going out and looking for it. Yeah, for sure. It's an environment where the probability of it being available is higher than it is at, say, the bank or the library. But the reality is that you're looking for it, and if you look for it, you're going to get it. That's what addicts do. But in terms of the corralling and the amount of, that was a big part of the reason why it was really difficult, at least for me, was all of a sudden, that you feel you kind of feel like you have no value because no one's dependent. Like, as my responsibility, my role is essentially to lead. And to sort of keep things together. And then all of a sudden, you've spent the last X amount of months or years giving. And then all of a sudden you get home and you got nothing to give. And your partner kind of needs you to give. And you want to give, but you don't have it. And they don't necessarily, you can get on the road, if you're the partner of a touring person, you can get out there and be out for a week and get an idea, but you're never going to really know until you're out there doing it and the toll it takes on people. But it's definitely can cause some serious mental health issues if you don't A, be honest with yourself, and B, look outside of your industry for help. Because, if you don't find, like I said before, this industry will allow you to do whatever the hell you want to do until the bottom line is affected. And they'll run you ragged. It will run you ragged. And I'm not going to say that. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's just the reality. When an artist is successful and is blowing up, they're gonna push you to the limit. They're gonna push everyone, the artist team, everyone to the limit. So no one's fault. That's normal because no one knows how long that explosion will last for, right? So, but if you don't take the time to take care of yourself and talk to people outside of it and realize that that it's important for you to sort of get checked yourself, it's not easy. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I feel like I'm on a tangent. I feel like I went on a tangent a really dark tangent there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, well, I'll shift gears for you.
Evil. The evil of the music industry. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So then, well, that's okay. I asked.
Listen, man, I will tell you this.
Go ahead. What are you going to tell me?
I didn't mean to pay off. I have lived every fucking cliche, and I do not for 1 second regret it. Done, literally every cliche, everything I read. And what was that? Who wrote that? The Led Zeppelin biography? Peter Grant. With what was the name of the book? I think it wasn't a songwriter. Anyway, that book's a huge part of my life. But literally every cliche that you could imagine, I experienced and I lived. Like I said, I was talking to you about like the 80s metal hair acts, the decade of decadence, as they like to call it. I mean, I was growing up watching that. So when I got to that level, I just thought it was a thing to do, and I don't regret it. I mean, it was so much fun. Listen, I can talk all I want about the negative side of the industry and of touring, but I can also tell you, man, that I don't regret it. Not at all. I embraced it. It was fun. Come on. I mean, how can you not? How can you not? I mean, anyone who says otherwise, a liar. Sorry.
So what are you doing? So what are you doing when you do get off the road? What are you up to? What kind of
play
things?
A lot of hockey.
You have to go find something fun to do.
I play hockey. Play a lot of hockey. It's like my biggest passion outside of music has always been hockey. I've been a goaltender since I was 7 years old. So I play a lot of recreational hockey. Do
Favorite
a lot of hiking.
Hockey team? Wait, do you have a favorite hockey team?
I mean, that's easy. I'm from Montreal, who have 24 Stanley Cups. I mean, we are the birthplace of hockey. So I would say Montreal. Where are you located?
Boston.
You know what? So I'll tell you. So, and congratulations for beating us the other night, 2-1 in overtime. But we're not nearly at the same level. But we do have 24 Stanley Cups. So just say that. And but I love Boston. That's another. What was the venue? Do you know if the restaurant The Harvest is still there? I used to go to this place in Cambridge. It was so good. It's like a farm to table place. I dated a girl in Boston. I love Boston. Great town. I'm sorry that your hockey team is so good, though. Great team, man. I have nothing but respect for the Bruins. At least you're not a Maple Leaf. I would dislike you far more if you told me you were from Toronto. If there's a team I have that just the thought of them makes me go. Urgh.
This interview is over.
Yeah, exactly. We're done here. We're done. But no, I guess so. A lot of hockey. I'm really into rucking. So that's weighted hiking. So you're carrying 40, 60 pounds for X amount of miles or kilometers because I'm Canadian. Spent a lot of time with my dog. For a while I was really into doing motorcycle builds for fun, doing a lot of cafe racers, but I got out of that when I got married because my wife didn't want me, having another hobby that could kill me. Hockey is bad enough. But yeah, so I try to keep myself busy. I mean, I'll be honest, since post-COVID, the last year, I would say last year since my last major tour, I've spent a lot of time just taking care of myself, sort of bringing myself back to myself. I'm sort of finding, for the lack of a better way of putting it, trying to find my why again. Why am I still doing this? What is it that what is it that I'm still chasing? And if I found it, why am I still doing it? But yeah, so it's a lot of reading as well. I like to read a lot of films. I keep myself as busy because if you don't keep yourself busy, that's when it gets. And I've been to that party when you don't keep yourself busy. That's when you find yourself in questionable places with questionable people doing questionable things, and that's not healthy.
So you got a lot of cool stuff. I mean, you've done a lot. I mean, so many.
I'm sorry that, like, I know we probably want to talk about a little more like the technical part of touring and what I do, but I don't know, man. I think it's.
Well, we've covered, I mean, I've talked to a lot of tour managers. And we've kind of covered the basis of what the job entails, the day-to-day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's really nice to see you talk more about the tour director sort of aspect of stuff. Plus your history is, you got a real rich history of being in the right places at the right time for a lot of artists.
That's another thing that to me is like, and it's funny that you say it because it's a lot of, I wrestle with that still because I found in my career that I've been the guy who, for whatever reason, is put in a position to elevate everything. But when you're the guy who does that, what I've learned, and often it's only after 2-3 years of doing it with the same client that you lose yourself because you give so much. Like, and especially when you're working with, I'm not going to point fingers at particular managers or anything like that. But when you're working with, groups of people who don't have the experience that you do, it can be trying. It can be, or when you have to teach people. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I have no problem with mentoring people, but not a manager. Like, if you're a manager, you should know how to manage. You should know. Like, you should know. But yeah, man, it takes a lot out of you to do it, to be that guy. And like you said, I've been blessed. Like, I've told my therapist this, and I've told people in the industry, like one of my mentors who is like VP at it's Evenco here in Montreal. It's called like Live Nation Montreal. He's like director or vice president of buying. He's like my Jedi master. It's like, I always tell him, just like, man, like it's I've gotten so many chances. It's insane. Like I don't know. I mean, I think it speaks to the quality of work I do. I think it speaks to my character for the most part. I'm certainly not a bad person. I certainly don't try to hurt anyone. I treat my crews very, very well. I fight for my crews when management doesn't want to pay them whatever the rate is. I'm like, yeah, we don't have a show without these guys. Excuse my language. We don't have a show if I don't have this guy. Yeah. We don't have a show. Or if I don't have this, like, you want the best lighting show, we need to hire this guy. Oh, whatever. He's charging $10,000 a week. You pay him $10,000 a week. He's done this, this, and this. Like, I fight for my people, and sometimes, to my detriment. But it's to me, it's really important to me to make sure that, you create the right culture and the right team. But yeah, I have been really lucky. I've been blessed to be at the right place at the right time. And and sometimes I think I may have taken it for granted, especially when I was in the throes of being a full-blown, like, addict. Like, I can certainly look back and say there were times where I just didn't realize, like, how beautiful and how unique and life-changing those moments and experiences those artists were. I mean, thankfully, I would say 90% of the artists that I've worked with, I still am pretty good friends with and talk to occasionally, some more than others. But it's still, it's man, I'm grateful, really incredibly grateful for the career that I've had and continue to have, and for the artists I've worked with and the people I've met and the restaurants I've eaten in and the cars I've driven as a result of all that.
I'm going to let Bonnie take the closing question, but I want to ask you one more thing before we do that. Both Bonnie and I are photographers. We're concert photographers. Yes. I work for
High maintenance. High maintenance. Oh, I love that venue.
Well, that's what I want to talk about.
Venue. I was there.
Oh, you were there for what show? Do you remember?
I want to say it was with the what was the name of the Alchemy tour with Seven Lions. That's like 2019. I am 90% sure. Where is it?
Oh, okay. That's Guilford, New Hampshire. Beautiful venue. It's an outdoor shed.
Or was I there? No. I was either there or maybe it was an Identity on 2011. One of those two, or it could have been with Ozo Motley, but I'm familiar with the venue.
Okay. Anyway,
New Hampshire.
Yes.
You're not too far. Northeast. Go ahead.
Right. So, from the perspective of a photographer, as a tour manager and stuff like that, we can be either your greatest ally or your biggest thorn in your side, depending on what's going on and what the rules are. I just want to ask from a tour manager perspective on having media at shows. Do you have any guidance or any suggestions or anything?
For photographers? I mean, listen, some tour managers could be real fucking dicks, and I've seen it. And I can't, I've always respected, I'll always talk to my artist first. I may not like having 20 photographers behind the DJ booth to get that shot. But if the artist wants it, I'll let it happen. Typically, I'm very much the first 3 songs, no flash guy in the pit. Great, no problem. I don't typically like having photographers around during the day, but during showtime, I have no problem if they're, and I'm not the kind of guy who's going to super police it. Unless it's coming directly from the client, from the artist, I don't really have a problem because I know we need, photographers are necessary. It's sometimes tougher when the touring team is carrying its own videographer and photographer because they want to have that what's the word I'm looking for? Like that access sort of be unique to them so they can really create the story that they want, create the narrative and show what they want. But honestly, man, the only time it's an inconvenience is when you're dealing with, and clearly neither one of you are junior photographers. You kind of know where to be and where not to be. But in dance music and EDM, you find a lot of people who are not real photographers or videographers. And they're just shooting. And like I said, I don't mean this in any ill will, but they just don't know the rules. And they seem to think a lot of media just seem to think that they have this right. But it's a two-way street. Like I want you to get the shot. I want you to get that shot where behind the DJ booth at the end of the set where the fire's going up and the hands up in the air and 20,000. I want you to get that shot. But don't be a dick about it. Like if my client says no, he doesn't want to have that at that moment, like there's a reason. Yep. But yeah, I would just say be cool with the tour manager. If the tour manager's a dick, the tour manager's a dick though. You're going to run into them. You're going to run into production managers like that. You're going to stage managers. Somebody just give them some time. Like that's what I tell people. Like so I've had photographers from me go, yo, dude, your stage manager's a real dick, even though you said it was okay. I said, just you didn't have breakfast yet. You didn't have his coffee. Give him some time. You're like unfortunately, you guys are often you're not that high up on a priority list in terms of how our day rolls. It's like I'll get the list in the beginning of the day. I'll look at it. I'll go cool. If I don't know if I don't know the name or I don't know the publication or the blog they're from, I'll put a little flag that and go, okay, I want to see who this person is. But it won't be till like close to doors where we'll really pay attention to it because we've got so many other things that are bigger priorities. But definitely, you guys can't do our jobs without you guys. Much respect to the photographers and videographers of the world. Does that answer your question?
Oh.
Go ahead.
Well, that's good to know. I think I see that question come up a lot. Like, what are the rules when I'm down there, et cetera? It's got to be pretty clear.
First 3 songs, no flash. It's super simple. If that's standard.
That's a standard. Last night I was told front of house only. So of course I'm like, do I have to shoot from behind the mixer?
But they're going to get mad at you because they're going to say that. And they're going to say no telephoto lenses. Well, how do you expect me to get my shot from front of the house?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's important also, like you said, to talk to the tour manager because the tour manager, when I walked in, just walked by and I said, hey, can you tell me what you mean by front of house? Do you want me? He goes, go wherever you want. Just don't climb up in those boxes because it was an opera house. I was like, okay, cool. Thanks. So
that's all that was required sometimes, just to talk to the tour manager. And the tour manager, if you get blowback from anyone, it's just like, well, because typically yeah, he said I could, but then typically what's going to happen is if we're saying that no matter who was having a bad day that day, it'll come down the ladder. Be like, hey, man, these photographers are allowed to do what the fuck they want.
So, you know what? I was going to ask a different question. I might have 2 questions here, but
sure.
We said he a whole bunch. Do we see any female tour managers, female tour directors out there?
There are quite a few. There are a lot. There are quite a few. One of my old road managers / assistants I think she's out with the Foos, but I think she's like I don't know if she's road managing the band. I think she's taking care of crew more than the band, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, there are my friend Bree Clark. She's a tour director. She does stuff remotely for a bunch of different clients. There are a lot of women, there's more and more for sure. Unfortunately, the industry is still really male dominated. It's the reality of it. It's like for whatever reason. But I, for one, am a huge advocate of having women on the road, not only because they, it puts all the boys generally on their best behavior. Your buses don't look like the girls around, guys take care of their shit. But it's also just having that energy around makes a huge difference. Like I know that may sound, sexist or short-sighted, but it's true. Just that energy changes everything.
For sure.
If the person is shitty at their job, it doesn't help. But if you've got a good, be an assistant tour manager, or you've got a great front of house woman, anyone on the crew, like who's in a position, especially in positions of authority, if it's a woman, it changes everything. Pearl Jam, I think, I'm pretty sure they've got a lot of women on their crew. I know Churches has a female tour manager. Taylor does it. Who else? There's a few out there. I mean, I don't know a lot of them personally, but I've crossed paths with a bunch of them. And that's great. I think it's the more the merrier.
There you go. So then what's coming up for you this year? What are you excited about?
To be honest with you, I'm excited about pivoting to some degree. I've sat here and decided I don't want to go back to what I was saying before, why you do this. And I've learned that I don't want to go back to what I've already was doing. So I'm listening to what's out there and hoping that the right client shows up, or I get inspired, because at this point, it's not about working with working for anybody. It's about working with the right client, with the right team, and with the right, the right magic. I'm really big on magic. It's all about the magic. You have to have something.
Magic.
Yeah, man, it's about that moment. Like there's always one song. Like I've been lucky enough to found that magic, that song, like that one moment, like, oh, I get it. Like that song that just immediately impassions me to want to work with the client. And now it's got to be more than that. It's not just about the money. It's not just about, the music's a huge part of it, but it's about, making sure that I am myself have the right support around me to do the job effectively, where I'm not taking on too much. Cause that's that was a bit of that was a challenge for me for a lot of years.
That's awesome. That sounds like 2024 is going to be something fun for you.
It's out there. There's things there. I mean, I've got projects, but I can't really talk about them until they actually are until I have a signed contract.
So are you in Montreal now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I am in Montreal. Go ahead.
And you do the whole, and you do tour, you'll tour, or
I globally, I go over.
Yeah.
I'll go anywhere in the world. Like I've, and I'll tour direct from home. I mean, I lived in LA for a couple of years too, so that helped. But I can do this from anywhere. Literally, the one thing about this job is you literally can do it from anywhere, unless you choose to be a tour or road manager, in which case you have to be the babysitter on the road. The
babysitter on the road.
Yeah. I like to be like that. Yeah. I like to be like Captain Kirk in the Starship Enterprise, sitting in my chair, just pushing buttons and telling people,
It sounds like that's another career choice for me, Jason. I think you never know. Tour manager. I don't know that I want to be the babysitter of people, but maybe the tour.
You're going to be the babysitter. You have to. You see, you have to go through the process. Like I said before, everyone has to get in the van. Get in the van first. Do that. Earn it.
I did that. That was the 80s and the early 90s.
Okay. Then if you've gone through that, then by all means, it's gonna. I think you should pursue
That's awesome.
it. You seem to have a great character for it.
Oh, thanks. I'm so happy that we got to meet you and chat with you.
Thanks. I'm hoping that it goes well and that I didn't say anything too crazy.
Well, this is my first time host. Yeah, this is my first time co-hosting with Jason. So Jason, he took a chance here with me today. So.
I think it went well. I hope you guys get the content you need, and I hope that I don't come across poorly. I hope that.
No, I think it's very.
I thought it was great.
It was excellent. Yeah, I thought you were very informative. A lot of good information and stuff like that. Good stories. Where can people go to find more information about you? I mean, do you want them to go to websites, social media, anything like that?
I mean, you can email me directly if you like. You can, I'll give you my email. You have my email. You could put it in the show notes, as they call it. I'm always willing to, share knowledge and work with some interesting people. If it's the right circumstances and it's a fit for everyone. I've never been, I have social media, but it doesn't really show you much about except for dogs and like stoicism and stuff like that. And, I've never been one, I've never had a card in 40 years or in 30 years. I've never had a card ever. It's just something, I don't know, again, like you said before, I've been right place, right time. So I've never really had to do that. And I'm not really soliciting any work either. So it's like, if you want to reach out and there's something cool, then for sure, I'm always game to have conversations, or if people have questions about the job and what they can expect, I'm always have time to talk to people who are interested in pursuing this as a career.
Cool. Do you have anything interesting coming up? Any plans coming up this year?
Like I said earlier, I have a lot of what ifs, a lot of conversations going, and a lot of things that were offered to me that I'm not privy to discuss yet, because they haven't, until the piece of paper is in front of me. Until I get a formal offer saying this is what we're offering, this is the duration. I'm not at real liberty to discuss it, but there's definitely stuff cooking. Whether or not I choose to do it is still up in the air. I can quite comfortably, not quite comfortably, but I can work locally here in Montreal. Just, the beauty of living in Quebec is there's an entire music community here where, you've got artists that can do 25, or we're exaggerating, like 20 cities in just Quebec. There's literally a whole scene. So, I can work locally if I need to. And, we have some big festivals, and I still work on contract with the Live Nation of Echo here in Montreal. So I keep myself busy, keep my hands in the fire, and listen to what's out there, but nothing formal as of yet.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode with Joe VillaCrusis. We hope you enjoyed it. You can check out our other guests and our other episodes on all your favorite podcast locations and on YouTube. Search for Tales from the Pit Podcast. Also, check out our website, talesfromthepit.net. Until the next time, we'll see ya. This episode was edited and produced by me, Jason Lavasser.